Number 10. His identity. Ghost has a pretty mysterious backstory. For starters, his alias is entirely unknown in the comics. Ghost claims to have been an IT programmer and an engineer at a company called Omnisapiant. Having a genius-level intellect, he impressed the board of directors, who allowed him to rise in the ranks. Ghost would quickly become their go-to guy, with the company prioritizing his happiness in order to keep him around, to the point of crafting lies around him to ensure he stayed put. More on that later though. In our number 9 spot, Ghost Tech. At Omnisapiant, Ghost developed a revolutionary processor that had the capability of physically changing in reaction to its surrounding environment. Now known as Ghost Tech, when the company had it in their possession, their sales skyrocketed, and Ghost became incredibly valuable to them. This also meant that he was hustling hardcore for the company, which led to months of exhaustion. When he tried to take a vacation, the board of directors were not down with this, so they whipped up a plan in which they paid off an attractive co-worker of Ghost's to fall in love with him, making him inclined to stay. And it worked. For a while at least, until she died in an explosion. Explosions, eh? How convenient. Well, at number 8 we have Revelations, which further explains how she died. Now his lover's death would unravel Ghost's perception of Omnisapient. Depressed, he poured his energy into immersing his consciousness into data networks that he had crafted, by wiring his flesh with flux state processors, which put his mind in a state of alpha that eliminated randomness, allowing him to better solve problems. This is when he pieced together that his deceased lover was actually hired by the board, and she was murdered by them when she tried to blackmail them for more money. So of course Ghost tried to flee, but the board caught on to his revelations and hired a contract killer to take him out. In the process, his body fused with his flux state processors, and the Ghost we now know was born. Up next, number 7, his first appearance. Ghost's backstory wouldn't be revealed until much later in the comics, when he divulged it to Moonstone in Thunderbolts 151. His first appearance featured the character targeting Tony Stark in Stark Enterprises. This goes down when Ghost was hired by Carrington Pax, the head exec of Roxxon Oil, to destroy the company Accutech Research and Development. Accutech was bought by Stark Enterprises, which led the two to clash, with Iron Man ultimately gaining the upper hand and Ghost swearing revenge. Later on, Ghost would eventually go rogue, causing the execs at Roxxon to get a little uncomfortable, leading them to hire another assassin to dispose of him, but Ghost ends up murdering him. In our number 6 spot, Thunderbolts. During the Dark Reign story arc, Ghost is recruited by Norman Osborn to join the Thunderbolts, a team that has consisted of many a hero over the years and now no longer operates. Initially, he didn't want to be a part of the team, considering that Norman Osborn stood for everything he was against, and only took part in order to sabotage the team's efforts from the inside. But later, when Luke Cage led the team, he would become more invested, working alongside Cage, Juggernaut, Fixer, Crossbones, Moonstone, and Man-Thing. And at number 5, his battle suit. The suit that Ghost wears has had many a makeover over the years, but its powers have always been pretty darn cool regardless of its aesthetic iteration. Using his Ghost tech, the suit allows for him to be invisible, and to be intangible if he chooses. The suit also aids him in hacking and reprogramming electronics, and he has some pretty high-tech weaponry that he also totes around. Guns that shoot bursts of electricity, sound-activated bombs, and self-targeting grenades. Side note, it's worth noting that after Ghost joins the Thunderbolts, he becomes even more of a recluse, and never takes off his suit. And at number 4, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, or just haven't been keeping up with any of the MCU updates that aren't Infinity War, you're probably aware that the villain in the upcoming Ant-Man sequel, Ant-Man and the Wasp, is none other than Ghost. But what's really cool about this version of Ghost is that the character deviates from the one that we're used to in the comics. Ghost is a female in the films, with the filmmakers stating that the character's gender seemed irrelevant when writing the baddie. So why not just make Ghost a woman? Pretty cool. The character will be played by Hannah John Kamen in the film. And at number 3, corporate autocracy. If you haven't gauged it by now, Ghost aggressively dislikes corporations. Spawning from his origins and the way that he was manipulated by Omnisapient, the character often finds himself in storylines where he's derailing larger corporations, which made perfect sense why he was an Iron Man villain from the get-go. His goal is to eliminate corporate autocracy, with the desire to not only mess things up for large corporations, but to also butcher those in charge and to be an industrial saboteur. Up next, number 2, Crosswords. Ghost is known for being a bit of a socially awkward paranoid vigilante. This even extends to the likes of crossword puzzles. In the same 1997 issue of Thunderbolts that he reveals his origin story in, the character also reveals a theory of his concerning crossword puzzles, which he tells to energy manipulator and teammate Moonstone. She approaches him to see he's hard at work on a crossword puzzle, and notes his recent interest in the pastime. Ghost reveals that it isn't a mental exercise, but rather that he believes crosswords are being used to communicate messages among a secret group of influential people in New York. Yeah, that's totally what they do. And last but not least, in at number 1, possession. Aside from the abilities that his suit gives him and his genius level intellect, Ghost is capable of possessing people, a skill that he tries to hide from his teammates on the Thunderbolts. We saw him pull this trick on his teammate Mach V while he was unconscious, with Ghost phasing into the character's armor and taking control of it, something that he stated he had no other choice to do, in order to fight back their foes. And in case you're wondering, this goes down in Thunderbolts Volume 1, Issue 146 and 147, with him initially taken over in 146.
Number 10. the Golden Age. The first Red Guardian, yes, the first, debuted in the Golden Age of comics, but only via retcon. He was Alexi Lebedev, and he debuted in Namor the Submariner Annual #1 in 1991. This comic would establish him as a hero from the same time period, who fought alongside Captain America and Namor. He appears to have been killed in the Purges during the 50s, in experiments that led to his successor, the version of himself that debuted before him. Sometimes there are retcons just to retcon. This appears to have been one of them. Number 9. There have been 7. Yup, 7 people have gone by this name. Legacy character to the max. The second person to hold that name is Alexi Shostakov. He is arguably the most iconic, but people have their faves. Okay, so that's 2. Who are the rest? So we have Dr. Tanya Belinsky, Joseph Petkis, Krasno Granitsky, Anton, and Nikolai Krylenko. Now, you know, the Red Guardians bounce around too. Despite being tied to Captain America, they don't all debut in his comics. For example, Alexi debuts in the Avengers. This is one of those characters who is iconic within comics, and yet outside of them, some may not know who exactly they are. There are a lot of characters floating around like that, and part of what is driving some of this fan excitement is the fact that it's David Harbour who's portraying the character, who many people are fond of thanks to his work on Stranger Things. Number 8. Life Model Decoy. These characters tend to have run-ins, or in the case of one iteration, just be Life Model Decoys, or LMDs, for the hip amongst you. So Alexi was rendered a Life Model Decoy in the latter part of his existence, in the Widowmaker crossover, and this LMD was out for blood. He was assassinating spies, and eventually had his sights set on Black Widow and Mockingbird, who were the focus of this team-up crossover. But let me dial it back. Some of you may be asking, just what is a Life Model Decoy? Well, an LMD is an android in the Marvel Universe, who can mimic all outward aspects of a real person, and they're good. Most people don't notice them. It's always a big plot reveal. Nick Fury was revealed to be using them all the time at one point. There was a throwaway joke about them in the Avengers in the MCU. Now, aside from Alexi, one of the Red Guardians was just always an LMD, and that one was Anton, the 6th Guardian, although it was a weird partial thing. Number 7. Only one has powers. Except for one of these Red Guardians, with rare exceptions or boosts from tech, they don't have powers. It was actually a little odd, since when Red Guardian was first fighting Captain America, he told him he had been trained to go against him and could hold his own with a serumed up Steve. So we're just supposed to go with he was trained to be as strong cause Russia. In Soviet Russia, serum takes you. The one Red Guardian who has powers is Dr. Tanya Belinsky. The others don't need it, they're powered by their red costumes and vodka. Number 6. Starlight. This is Dr. Tanya, and she is a bit different than your typical Red Guardians, in that she adopted a costume similar to them and their mantle, but was associated with being a bit of a rebel. She was a neurosurgeon who turned to vigilantism after her father was sent to Siberia as a dissident. She fought to protect dissidents and attempt social reform, so hardly the symbol of the homeland that they would have liked to be carrying the Red Guardian mantle. However, she would leave Russia when Doctor Strange requested her specifically to perform a brain transplant. She would stay in America and join the Defenders. It was after this she would get her powers, and it's not exactly a happy story. She would be dominated by the Presence, who would transform her using a Chernobyl-like blast and then manipulate her to his whims. Her and the Presence would eventually find a balance, and she would later take on the name Starlight. Dr. Tanya was the 2nd Red Guardian, or the 3rd if we have to acknowledge that retcon. Why? Number 5. Renaissance Alexi. Red Guardian would emerge out of Marvel's Renaissance period, debuting in the Avengers number 43 in 1967. This period saw a burst of new character creations for the newly named company, Marvel. Marvel only changed their name to Marvel in 1961, alongside the release of the Fantastic Four. Before that, they had been Timely, and before that, Atlas. The team that launched their renaissance was the Fantastic Four, who were commissioned because of the success of the Justice League. Alexi was an acclaimed World War II pilot who was chosen for a super elite special test flight, and because of his highly publicized missions, he became a public hero. And he was later recruited as Red Guardian, essentially Captain Soviet, because Russia was reacting to Captain America. He actually really got into his role and believed in the Soviet cause. It would actually drive a wedge in his marriage, but he would ultimately die heroically and epically. Buried by lava, what a way to go. Number 4. Captain America. So what is the context of his Captain America connection, and can he beat him? Let them fight. So Red Guardian is, as mentioned, the Russian equivalent of Captain America, and he's more than capable of going toe-to-toe with him. He even damaged his shield so it couldn't boomerang back to him. No shield blast while fighting the Red Guardian. Cap even thinks he's met his match. Has Captain America met his match? I'm more concerned about the fact that he's thinking about himself in the 3rd person. I also like that when Cap rallies, he calls the Red Guardian a good fella. The concept of other countries having their own captains has been bandied about. We've got Captain Britain, and up here in the Great White North we have Captain Canuck. Yes, Captain Canuck. he sure exists. And he has action figures. Number 3, From Russia with Love. One of the Red Guardians is a reference to the 1957 Ian Fleming spy novel From Russia with Love. This, of course, is a James Bond novel. How? Well, let me explain. So this Red Guardian, who we're going to be talking about, is the 5th to appear in the canon narratively. Chronologically, from a meta standpoint, it would be a bit different, again because of that 1991 reboot. This is Krasno Granitsky. He appeared in Maverick number 10 in 1998, and his name is an homage to the assassin in the From Russia with Love story, Donovan Grant. It's actually the Russianized version of that name, which is fitting because Donovan's moniker was Red. Spy references, hooray! Number 2, Ronin. The Red Guardian is yet another character to take on the name Ronin. What will that mean for the MCU? It remains to be seen. We did get to see Hawkeye as Ronin, so we'll have to wait and see what the future holds. However, the Ronin Alexi, because it was Alexi who this happened to, because of course it was, he was the LMD version. So we don't have to think about all those bad things he did as our Alexi. You know, Red Guardian has actually been adapted before, like in cartoons and the like. It's an interesting situation. Maybe he'll pop off now that he's all over the outlets. People want more Red Guardian, or just more David Harbour, not as Hellboy. And finally, in at number 1, his marriage to Natasha. That's right, Black Widow and Red Guardian Alexi were married. He was her husband from early on back in the day when she was still a ballerina. Their marriage was pretty solid up until the point where he became Red Guardian and he would go full gung-ho for the motherland, but she would become more and more disillusioned. Their marriage would fall apart after Natasha defected to the United States, and he remained loyal to Russia, but she still had a soft spot in her heart for her first husband. You think they'll adapt that? I mean, it's the MCU, so probably not.
Number 10, his backstory. John Walker looked up to his older brother Michael, especially after he sacrificed his life serving in the Vietnam War. Now, John decided to follow in his brother's footsteps and he went into military service. Only thing was, he didn't feel like the hero that his brother Michael was. So he got the power broker treatment, which enhanced his strength in a great amount, so much so that he was able to now compete in the Universal Class Wrestling Federation. It's like the wrestlers, but like they're all super wrestlers. They're really strong. But his agent was like, hey, instead of that, why don't you maybe, I don't know, become a superhero instead? Because, you know, those things are pretty cool right now. And that's exactly what he did. Number 9, Super Patriot. So yeah, he did just that. He carried the inspiration from his brother and donned the suit of Super Patriot. Making a spectacular first appearance in Captain America 323, John Walker was standing up for America and its true ideals, and he chose July 4th to make his debut. What a patriot, of course, of course. So Cap walks by as this is happening and he sees this big poster with his face on it, the face of Captain America with a red X through it, like he's on X Factor or something. And on the other side of the stage was the Super Patriot with a yes on his. It's a bit odd. So the camera crew leans in, some bad guys just happen to rush the stage, and then Super Patriot takes them down, all stylish too, you know? Then the cops run in, and then Super Patriot thinks, right on cue, gents. So something's fishy here, so Cap's onto him. So he starts to publicly shame these Captain America supporters, these maniac supporters as he calls them, the guys that rush the stage. They appear later on in the comic, but Cap takes care of them in his other suit. This happens again 4 issues later. Who are these guys? What's going on? So John and his 3 bold urban commandos staged another attack. Captain America arrives and puts a stop to it, proudly flashing his Avengers ID in the process. Because if you got it, flaunt it. And then we have a star-spangled battle, which brings me to my next point. Number 8. He puts up a good fight. So this guy's a little stronger now, sure. He wears a similar suit, he gets a few guys to stage a beatdown, but when push comes to shove, can this guy go toe-to-toe with Captain America? Yes, the answer is yes, he most certainly can. So they battle it out for 27 minutes straight. And the Patriot never quite being able to land a blow on Cap, and Cap never quite being able to smash the Patriot hard enough to keep him down. They're both standing there out of breath, just not really sure what to do with each other at this point. But Super Patriot has some tricks up his sleeve. He hears Springsteen playing at the concert and decides to wrap it up, using some throwing stars this time around. And then John, of course, calling Steve a loser as he runs away, literally adding insult to injury. Number 7, more than just a show. So he loves attention, he can take on Captain America, he loves Springsteen, but just how far will John Walker go while he's running around dressed as a superhero? Well, in Captain America 332, Warhead drops in via parachute. He arrives with a message, and the message is, make war some more. Warhead. Like he signed it at the bottom, Warhead, as if they wouldn't know that's him. parasailing from the sky. Now his name's Warhead. He drops down and lands in Washington, where he threatens to detonate a nuclear weapon. So he sets up this table on top of the monument, which, I mean, great call, that would be rather uncomfortable otherwise. So Super Patriot shows up, breaks a police sign to show how strong and cool he is, and then he runs up the stairs super quick, ties a rope around his waist, and jumps out of the window. Climbs up the side, up to Warhead and his well-balanced table, and then he starts using throwing stars at him this time around, connecting one of them to his face. And then when he was close enough, he turned the tables, quite literally, he turned the table into a diving board and off he went. So John Walker is not afraid to push the envelope while he's being a flashy fraud, which makes my next point even more terrifying. Number 6, he once became Captain America. So when Steve Rogers abandoned his identity due to Red Skull's manipulation of the Commission on Superhero Activities, in that same issue, somebody had to suit up. The government needed a new figure. Similar to the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, now we need a new Cap, because the other one's old. Chris Evans is now old. So the next issue in the series was titled The Replacement. It's like they're casting a movie. There's headshots that are laid out. The government is now weighing their options. Okay, maybe we'll ask Jack Monroe, aka the Nomad. After all, he has advanced abilities. He could physically do the job. But nope, he's a friend of Steve Rogers. Falcon? No chance. They even debated asking Nick Fury to take the mantle of Captain America, but they figure he's too old. So they look at the guy who just launched a criminal off of a building. The Star-Spangled Patriot gets a promotion. Meet your new Captain America. Number 5, he has a posse. Steve has Sam, Simon has Garfunkel, but who's the trusty sidekick for this new Captain America? Who backs up John Walker? Well, that would be the Bold Urban Commandos. I mentioned them a little bit earlier. They're also referred to as the Bucks. So instead of one sidekick, John Walker has 3. At least for a bit. They like to pop out and razzle him. One even pretends to be Captain America moments after Walker was offered the promotion. He comes out, he's like, what are you doing? I'm just kidding, it's me. What's up? So the Buckies wore Captain America masks, they wore Captain America pants, boots, but they were topless. Yeah, they were topless. I guess they were really into wrestling. They took a page out of that book and were like, you know what? No tops for us. We're just gonna be ripped and wear boots. John's right-hand man, Lamar Hoskins, had been by John's side since the military. So he was asked to be the new primary Bucky, which we see on the front cover of issue 334. Only now he goes by Battlestar, which sounds a bit cooler than Bucky. Number 4, his friends betrayed him. So those sidekicks that I was telling you about, the other two besides Bucky, were now the left and right winger. They're like this new duo, this new evil duo. They look similar and they travel together. Of course, it's a whole thing. They revealed Captain John Walker's identity to the public in issue 341. In Battlestar, they almost reveal his identity, but a swift kick to the jaw from Walker interrupted that one. So left winger and right winger used John's old Super Patriot tech against him, like the torch, the little torch sword. They used that against him. His old friends, his old weapons, now coming back to haunt him. How lovely. They were eventually beat down and arrested, but not only was John Walker's name now out there, so was his address. So when the entire world knows your identity, you either make a deal with the devil, like Spider-Man did, or you just make a new super identity, like number 3, tragic attack. What's a superhero without a tragic backstory involving parents? It would be nothing. That's like every superhero. Uncles, aunts, parents, it's like you can't have any role models if you want to be a superhero. Gotta be an orphan or have one aunt. Now, because his name was out in the public and he is Captain America, people wanted to get at him. They had some unfinished business. Specifically the Watchdogs, who I'm not even gonna get into because they're just absolutely horrible. So they took out John Walker's parents and he responded. Well, he did what you would expect John Walker to do at this point, so he took them out as well. Yeah, John even went so far after this where he actually wiped out left and right winger, so using that same torch yet again, John used it on them to ignite explosives that they were strapped to. Real Looney Tunes way to go out. Or Rachel Dawes. I like how he doesn't look back at the explosion either, right? Of course not. Of course not. Number 2, US agent. Eventually, John Walker's death was faked by a member of the commission and he came back with yet another upgrade. This time he came back as US agent. He had to battle an ironmonger as a test, and then he took it down in a rather stylish way, and it ended up being Machine Smith after all. Shocker, it was a villain. John Walker, in the flesh, he is back and ready for action. After rescuing him from the power broker, he reunited with his old pal, Bucky / now Battlestar. And finally, number 1, West Coast Avengers. After all of this, what if I told you that once he was part of the West Coast Avengers? Yeah, this is where I think the MCU's version of John Walker will pick up. So in the comics, when Hawkeye moved to the West Coast and set up an Avengers team there, the government wanted to put a government official to kind of make sure things are running smoothly, to keep an eye on everything. At this time, the Vision was a bit of a problem as well, so it kind of made sense. So they sent in US agent John Walker. So the cover of the same West Coast Avengers comic has White Vision right on the front. So perhaps with WandaVision now ending, with White Vision being a thing that's out there, and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier starting, we could be getting close to seeing this West Coast Avengers team in the MCU.